And the president, who just spoke moments ago and was as emotional as anyone has ever seen him. I mean, he wiped tears away. I'm eager to hear Fox call those tears fake. They weren't.
Yeah. The majority of those who died today were children. Beautiful little kids between the ages of 5 and 10 years old. They had their entire lives ahead of them. Birthdays, graduations, weddings, kids of their own. Among the fallen were also teachers, men and women who devoted their lives to helping our children fulfill their dreams. So our hearts are broken today.
Look, as I said, they are not the most culpable. The NRA is, the Republicans who always block gun control, etc. And that is an incredibly touching moment. And I believe that, of course, he means it.
Yeah.
He does. But and maybe I'm the bad guy here, but I have seen President Obama say things before and not follow through. So to me, what's much more important than the tears is if he actually takes action. Mm-hmm. Now, you got to give him time here. This is the 18 kids dead, 27 killed overall, teachers dead. I guess it's even worse than the congresswoman being shot in the head. I guess it's worse than all the people who died in Aurora, Colorado. I guess it's worse than all the people who died at the Sikh temple. So, but I hope you're with me, that if after all this, and after he is genuinely emotional, if he still does nothing about it, or at the first sign of conflict, and there will be tremendous conflict over this, the Republicans, once the dust settles, will unleash a storm against anyone who proposes gun control legislation. Will he wilt away, or will he have that same emotion and courage that he showed today? JR.
No, I guess I'm along with your band of bad guys. This is the last chance. Okay. As we all know, I voted for him. I believe he's going to do things differently in this term. I remember we talked about it before this last election. I'm buying this, but I don't need to see him wiping tears away.
Yeah.
I don't care. I'm sorry. I don't care if he's crying. If he's not crying, that's okay. If he is crying, that's okay. Neither one makes a difference to me. I don't need my president to cry over this. I need him to do something about it. That's all.
John.
Yeah, you brought up the NRA before, and this is what is actually what bothers me so much when in the wake, just shortly after an event like this happens, they say don't talk about it. It's not just that the people who have a vested interest in regard to gun sales and things like that don't want it to ever be talked about. That's certainly true. But it's that they don't want us on our side to talk about it. But you can be sure that throughout today, probably already today on Fox News and on the conservative blogs, they're talking about their side. They're making their case for why there shouldn't be any gun regulation. In particular in two areas. There are two areas that they're going to get it wrong on purpose to fool anybody watching the news because they get it wrong in the wake of every shooting. I'll go over the first one really fast, but the second one I think is important. I'd like to talk about it. Earlier today, we also found out about a mass stabbing in China. There was a man, Min Yingjun, in the Henan province village of Chengping. He went on a knife-wielding rampage, cut 22 children and 1 adult. 2 are seriously injured, none are dead. Now, they're going to use this as an example of, look, if you had gun regulations, there could still be mass attacks, mass violence. And that is true, although they're extremely, extremely rare. No one has died. There are no gunshot wounds in Chengping right now. But that's one way that they're going to get it wrong, and they're going to use this particular instance, I think, to make that case.
I've already gotten replies on Twitter. Oh, yeah, well, there was a stabbing in China. Well, what can you do about that? Well, first of all those kids are alive. All of our kids are dead. Because in one case, they used a knife. In another case, they used a gun. Now, can they do it? Yes, but these stories of mass stabbings are incredibly rare, whereas the mass shootings are incredibly frequent in this country.
If the president, what I was going to say, if he hadn't said anything about this and said today's not the day, I would have said, okay, I got you. Today's not the day. It's happening. Tomorrow morning, it starts. And there's no excuse. It starts at 8 a.m. on a Saturday, and you got to get cracking. But what is it with around the country that other people aren't allowed to talk about it? That somehow we're politicized. Or I don't have I don't know about you guys. I presume I don't have any agenda. I don't have a gun control agenda. I'd like fewer families to be destroyed by gun violence, because we've had nearly 9,000 homicides this year, gun violence homicides in the United States this year. I think that it's fair to spare families from that, and I'd like no kindergartners to be killed anymore. So if that's my agenda. That's my crazy, nutty agenda, and I think it's perfectly acceptable for people. I don't think the chief of the police there in Connecticut should be talking about gun control today, but
he's got other things on his plate.
Those people need to be helping those families. The rest of us have an obligation to protect other kids, other kindergarten.
For all the people who say, okay, don't talk about it today, great, name the date.
Yeah.
Name the date. And we'll talk about it then, okay? Say, hey, you know what? Let's give it maybe. Ben says tomorrow. Let's give it a weekend. That's a fair argument. So Monday, are you ready to talk about it Monday? No. Yeah. The reason they say don't talk about it now and the reason they're not going to name a date is because they don't ever want you to talk about it, and this is a political trick. Now, some of the people who say it, I think, earnestly got brainwashed and think, oh my God, yeah, wait, there's this politicizing, etc., right? But the guys who did that brainwashing, did the talking point in the first place, their whole agenda was, hey, let's say it's politicizing it so that we never, ever, ever discuss it, and especially do not discuss it when people might be angry enough to actually take action to correct things. And can you imagine if after 9/11, and George Bush came out and said, we're going to go after al-Qaeda. They're the sons of bitches who did this. And the Democrats said, hey, don't politicize it.
Right, not today.
Not today. Don't talk about it today. Are you kidding me? Of course we're going to go after the guys who did it. After 9/11, we even went after guys who didn't do it.
I mean, we have nearly, again, if I had my numbers correct, 9,000 gun homicides in the United States this year or last year. The last year it's been tabulated, right? If there were no guns, if there were no handguns, yeah, there'd still be homicides, but we'd reduce it, I don't know, 90%. Everyone on the planet knows that. You don't need data to back that up. All those people are not going to get killed with knives or cars, or as Dr. Keith Abloh said after the Colorado shooting, by throwing acid in people's faces, which was another one of his suggestions.
I wish that I could do anything to have put a knife in the hand of Ryan Lanza this morning as opposed to 4 firearms, because the damage would have been so much reduced. And some of those children who were killed would almost certainly not have died today if he was wielding a knife instead.
One more from President Obama.
As a country, we have been through this too many times. Whether it's an elementary school in Newton, or a shopping mall in Oregon, or a temple in Wisconsin, or a movie theater in Aurora, or a street corner in Chicago, these neighborhoods are our neighborhoods. And these children are our children. And we're going to have to come together and take meaningful action to prevent more tragedies like this, regardless of the politics.
At a bare minimum, limit the number of bullets in a magazine, okay? They get to kill a lot more efficiently. They don't need to be able to fire 100 or even 30 bullets at a time if you're going deer hunting. No one can make that excuse. It is pathetic. It's meant to kill more people in these mass killings, okay? Number 2, we have to reinstate the assault weapons ban, which good luck to us, because, man, there is going to be holy hell over that.
Yes, agreed completely. And, all of us who care about politics and pay a lot of attention to it commit a grave injustice to the American people when because we cover it because we love it, but the idea is that we're trying to create a more informed electorate and have smarter people making decisions. Everybody across the board, reach the entire country. But we don't pay any attention to state house races ever. Yeah. Nobody does. And the reason these laws all pass is because really conservative people who don't care about stuff like this are in state house after state house after state house with Republican lower houses and Republican upper houses and Republican governors, and they pass these laws. And the NRA, no exaggeration, the NRA writes these laws, gives it to them. Mm-hmm. The lower house votes on it, the upper house votes on it, the governor signs it, and that's it.
And they buy it for almost nothing.
And that's how 33 or 34 states, all of them with Republican houses and Republican senates, were able to pass voter ID laws, many of which thankfully didn't have an effect. Again, this is what happens when you vote for a clown to be your local state house representative, and we're guilty of not covering that enough.
The NRA, and I don't know if people will find this controversial, I find it obvious, literally has blood on its hands. They represent the gun manufacturers who want to sell more and more weapons. They do everything they can to make sure that we have the most amount of weapons with the most amount of bullets that could kill the most amount of people.
Yeah.
And then they say, oh, well, golly gee, oh, you're swimming in this ocean of guns that we helped sell to all Americans. And by the way, after every one of these killings, gun sales goes up, not down. So I'm sure those gun manufacturers are also ecstatic about that. And this is not something where it's theoretical. There are people dead in the streets.
Yeah.
And there is an organization who is dedicated to making sure that there are more weapons that kill those people in the hands of maniacs across the country. They say, oh, no, we want every law-abiding citizen to have it, and we have no process by which to keep maniacs from having it. But theoretically, wouldn't it be nice if maniacs didn't have it? But we will prevent every effort to make sure that maniacs do not have it. Any regulation so that maniacs, to give you a sense, it's not just mental people. And the NRA fought and won on an issue of whether people on the terrorist watch list could have a gun. And the NRA said, absolutely, they should be allowed to own a gun. People on the terrorist watch list. Do they have blood on their hands? Come on.
Their love of
me?
guns outweighed their hatred of Muslims for once.
What would have been nice in the speech today is, I'm sorry. I should have fought harder. I should have fought harder after the Gabby Giffords shooting. I should have fought harder after the Sikh temple shooting. I should have fought harder after the Aurora, Colorado shooting. I'm sorry that I let you down and we didn't pass any gun control under my watch. And
Well, they weren't going to pass any, but we didn't try.
yeah.
Right.
Look, if he was being honest, he would say, I'm sorry that I was too politically afraid to have tried anything at all. Of course, he's not going to say that, but he could have done a Richard Clark and say, I'm sorry for all of our failures in not doing gun control at all in Washington.